It is still Sunday race day, and we are here to talk about the Brazilian Grand Prix, where for the first time ever, George Russell became a Grand Prix winner from Lewis Hamilton in second and Carlos Sainz in third. And for the first time in 2022, we have a race winner that isn't Mercedes that isn't Red Bull or Ferrari. So, Jordan, we have a lot to unpack from this, what I think is probably my favorite race of the season. So yeah, what do you think about this race? How this unreal race unfolded?
I think it was a great race. I really enjoyed watching it. It was really a good race, and it was great to see George win. What was even better than the race was qualifying and seeing K Mag get pole position. I think that I don't want to go this episode without saying that because there's a lot to talk about, and I don't want to forget about that.
Yeah, yeah. No, trust me. I have my notes. I have K-Mag on poll as the first thing that we're going to talk about. But before we do, we didn't talk about Mexico because, to be honest with you, there was nothing to say about Mexico. It was boring. Like for me, I did not see a purpose of watching that race. To be honest with you, it kind of sucked. Like the Mexican fans deserve a much better circuit than the crap that they have.
Yeah, we always like to say that the stadium section is so cool, which it is.
It is.
If the stadium wasn't there, those turns actually suck.
It's like a four apex. No, it's like a weird rounded apex turn and then into like a left hand. So stupid.
Yeah, it really does suck. Like I don't understand. They need to fix that.
Like the Mexican fans deserve a much better circuit because you could see how wild they are when Sergio Perez ends up on the podium. So,
Yeah,
yeah, well, yeah, I guess that was Mexico. It happened. That's exactly what it was.
there's nothing more to it.
Yeah. But yeah, let's go to qualifying where because it's a sprint, we had it on Friday and I had off work this Friday and I was eating poutine with my family who came to visit and all I see on the live timing is Kevin Magnussen is on pole. And there's like 1 minute left. And I'm like, oh yeah, no worries. Like Verstappen's gonna pull out some sort of lap and he's gonna get on pole or something like that. Oh no no no. How wrong we were. It was too wet for people to be able to go out. I since rewatched all of qualifying. But yeah, Kevin Magnussen in a Haas, which is probably the worst car on the grid, if not the second worst, managed to put it together at the lap of his life to get his first ever pole position from a man that wasn't even supposed to be on the grid to now a pole position sitter in Formula One. What a guy. Even though there are much better drivers than him who aren't in F1, I still think just what a guy.
Yeah, no, you and I have differing opinions on this. I really like Kevin Magnussen. I said it since the beginning. I think he's great. I think he deserves to be in F1.
I
I
think that there are better drivers than Kevin Magnussen.
Yeah, I know you do. I think he deserves
Haas loves Kevin Magnussen, to be fair.
They do. I think that he has a perpetual seated Haas unless somebody comes with like a half decent driver and a boatload of cash.
So basically Mazepin.
No, because he's not a half decent driver.
Oh, oh my God.
Like we have to understand that he's a pole sitter, shouldn't be a pole sitter, but also he was a podium sitter on his first race in Formula
Yeah, in
One.
his debut in McLaren.
That's gotta mean something.
Yeah.
Um, I think that they love him at Haas. I think he's a perpetual seated Haas. Um, until somebody comes with a boatload of cash and actually a half decent driver. If Nikita Mazepin was somewhat of a good driver, I think they may have kept him, but he's not even a good driver, so they didn't keep him. And I think they used that as an excuse to let him go. That was my opinion, but
Yeah. But what an amazing lap from him. I mean, Damn, in the wet in Interlagos, I think this rivals Stroll on pole as probably one of the best pole position laps in recent history. Because that lap in Turkey from 2020 is something that I will always remember as a shining moment in my like my second wave of Formula One love. So yeah, this definitely has to be on that level of the most unlikely polls that anyone has ever seen. And I think that this is probably the most unlikely poll we're ever going to see in Formula One, based on the fact that they're currently eighth or ninth in the Constructors' Championship. Yeah, so
They're fighting for eighth with AlphaTauri.
yeah, AlphaTauri sucks this year, but
That's
no,
why Pierre
Haas,
Gasly's leaving.
yeah, but yeah, Haas has a pole position. Unreal. And Mick Schumacher finished in 20th.
Could you believe at the beginning of the season if I told you that Haas was going to get a pole position? Would you believe me?
I would have said you're on crack. You're on Mike Crack.
Yeah. You thought Aston Martin was going to win 2 races. Nope. Haas
No,
pole position.
no, Haas pole position. No Aston Martin race wins.
And officially, Jonah's prediction will not happen because he said that Aston Martin will win 2 races, one Lance, one Seb. There's one race left in the season, and the race just happened, and Lance or Seb did not win. So officially, Jonah's prediction cannot come to fruition. My prediction cannot come to fruition either because I said that Bottas would get 2 podiums.
Yeah,
Not
he has
gotten
none.
none. He actually has had a worse season than Aston Martin.
Yeah, I mean that I wanted to talk about this a little bit later, but Aston Martin could still pick up sixth place in the Constructors' Championship with a solid outing next week.
Yeah, that's if they have a very solid outing next week.
Well, I mean they would need to get 6 points.
Yeah, but
Five
join
or
that
six
Martin,
points.
they wind up in 10th and 9th, and boom, you have 3 points.
Let me dream, okay? they need the extra wind tunnel time.
Yeah, literally.
But yeah, let's run over to the sprint. Um, and probably the craziest moment of what the hell is going on in Alpine's garage, where Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso hit each other and compromised both of their races. What do you think?
Well,
Whose fault was it? What do you take from there? Otmar was losing it after. Like, what do you take of that entire scenario?
well, I want to read a quote to highlight the importance of this scenario.
Is this an Otmar Safnauer quote
No,
from
it's a Fernando Alonso quote. Let me read it. The quote says, Alonso, after his crash with Ocon via Sky Sports. One more race and it's over. Finally, Fernando Alonso. So, so I wanted to bring that up and talk about that with you because, yes, it was.
Fernando Alonso is the eternal teammate killer. I think we've known this.
Yeah, and he's coming to Aston Martin. Um, and yeah, so yes, there was a collision, front wing gone. Damaged or ruined his race, we should say. And Fernando Alonso was not having it. He was not happy.
Yeah.
But
To be fair, Vettel and Stroll also had a similar scenario, and Vettel's reaction was, okay.
yeah.
Oh my God. Anyways, sorry, continue.
So, I just think that it's just interesting how teammate dynamics work and how frustrated you could be at a front wing. I really have an interest, have a hard time trying to make out what this really means. Does this mean that Gasly is going to fail next year with Ocon, or does it mean that Alonso is going to fail next year with Stroll? And I don't know.
Here's what I think. I think that this is not this is not a one-off, Jordan. We've seen Fernando Alonso's career. How many teammates has he killed in the span of his F1 career? Let's not forget about Stoffel Van Dorn, who's now no longer in F1. Felipe Massa, who could have been a driver's champion. Bruno Senna literally crashed because of Crashgate in 2008 to allow Fernando to win and stay in the championship. Like, seriously, you would think that some teams would have to look around, see Fernando's history, and be like, hey, maybe I don't want this guy on my team. Maybe he's kind of toxic. I
Yeah,
think it's a Fernando problem. And
I
like I looked through the Alpine comments and everyone's like, fire Ocon, fire Ocon. I'm like, no, 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 no. Fernando Alonso's the problem here. And I'm so annoyed that he's going to Aston Martin next year because of it.
yeah, and I don't know. This begs to ask the question: what does, because of the off the track things he could possibly say, because we know that he has a mouth and we know that he is who he is, what does Aston Martin see in Fernando Alonso? What do they expect out of him?
On track results.
Yeah, let's hope, because he does deliver on
Yeah.
track, let's be honest.
Yeah, he does well on track, but I mean, I guess I could tell you this this reminds me of a hockey team that, well, the hockey team that I currently play on. In my first year, our top scorer basically scored all the goals, put up all the points and everything, but he was such a toxic character that regardless of how much he scored on the surface, I kicked him off the team because my teammates weren't enjoying his company. So I feel like that's the same scenario of what's going on. I should probably mention I'm the captain of my team, so I had the authority to do that. But yeah, that it's I think that's the same scenario.
Yeah, well, in this case, it's Alonso who chose to leave and go to Aston Martin without even telling Alpine, which is also indicative of his communication skills.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I just wanted to bring that quote up because it's a very interesting quote.
we're gonna bring up a few quotes later.
Yes.
Meanwhile, and then George Russell wins the sprint race. I mean, just beautiful driving from him at the same time. Anything else that we mentioned in the sprint, or moving on to the race?
Yeah, I would have liked to have seen Kevin Magnussen hang on to P1 for quite a little longer. But I know
He's in a bad car.
I know, but just a man can dream, okay?
Yeah, I was just like, I want Kevin Magnussen to come away with 1 point, please, and he got 1 point.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, in the race, it was not a good start for our boy K Mag, um, where Ricardo tagged him, and then his car spun around and hit Ricardo in the side, which then let both cars to be out of the race. And I think that that's an absolutely horrible way for K Mag to end what could be maybe the best weekend of his F1 career. I mean, sure, he ended up on the podium, but he was in relatively competitive machinery. Here, he was in like a garbage car, and he put it on pole position, and he came away with the points in the sprint race. So yeah, and I think that that's also indicative of how Daniel Ricciardo's season's been going, because I'm happy that he doesn't have a seat for next year. That's what I have to say about it, because he hasn't been up to driving standards this year.
He is not. I agree with that. I can't disagree with it. If I disagree with it, that means I'm not watching F1, which I am, so I do have to agree with it. But I do think that he deserves a seat in F1 still. He may not have been up to driving standards this year, but I do think that this is a 8-time Grand Prix winner, 2 podiums with Renault. He still deserves a seat in F1. I'm a big proponent of it. I think he deserves one more season. And if that season goes like this one, I think that he should be out of F1.
I don't think so. I think that his leash has been tightened enough in McLaren this year where anyone else that's going to take him on is kind of like the veteran who gets signed on a $750,000 deal just to see what happens, and then he gets
Well,
cut halfway through the season. You know what I'm talking about?
yeah. Well, it's interesting because we started recording this podcast um into the Daniel Ricciardo's first season with McLaren, and we'd spoken
Yeah,
about our driver rankings. And when we spoke about that, I said that you know I like Daniel Ricciardo, but he's on the decline because when you keep on switching teams, man, it it gets harder and harder. And
yeah,
we see that with lots of drivers. I think the latest example is Daniel Ricciardo. Um, and I said that I think that he will regret the decision of going to McLaren, just like Cyril Abiteboul claimed he
yeah.
was. And
He left at the best time.
yeah, and it's surely came true. You
Yeah,
know, he can tattoo his team principal all he wants. It won't keep him a seat in McLaren.
exactly. Yeah, I think that's it for him. Meanwhile, after the safety car restart, PTSD to 2021 in Brazil, where, Lewis and Max may have had a few collisions last year. I don't know if you remember any of them.
Just a
I don't
bit.
know. I don't know if they were memorable at all, but there were a few collisions that happened last year. And Max's wing got ripped off. Lewis got hit in the side and the floor. Each of them were saying that they didn't get enough space, but I think that it was I don't know. I don't know who didn't give another person enough space. I mean, based on previous scenarios, I would say Max never gives people enough space, but I don't know about this one.
I will always remember when they crashed in Monza in 2021, and Max said, "That's what you get when you don't leave the space." I will always remember that. And every time I think of Max and a close call, that's the quote that I think of in
Yeah,
his Dutch accent.
definitely.
And
And that reminds me also of Fernando. All the time you have to leave the space.
all the time. But I think it was fair game. I really think it was fair game. Um,
You think it was just a racing incident?
Absolutely.
Hmm.
I think it was very fair game.
Care to elaborate?
Yeah, I think that first of all, I think that it would have been noted and investigated further had the stewards thought it was not a racing incident. That's number one.
Fair.
And didn't they say, doesn't the rule book say you have to leave a car's width of room?
Oh, am
Doesn't
I
that,
thinking? Am I thinking about? Oh, yes, you're right.
and I think that just gauging by my perception of my TV screen that there may have just been, like
Exactly one car
Martin,
length.
like Martin Brundle said, a car's width and nothing more.
Yeah, I think also that another reason why it was 50-50 for me is because of um because of the way that um words are escaping me. Because of the way that through turn one and through turn two, Max was ahead and then Lewis was ahead. So basically, once someone's ahead, you need to be able to leave space unless you get a 5-second penalty for it. Um, I That's also where I thought it was 50-50 because at one point Max was ahead in turn one, and then when they were fighting and they collided, it was like just on the other side of turn two, and I saw that Lewis had like his wing in front. So for me, it was 50-50.
I think that it could go either way, but I really think there was just enough for the
Mm.
stewards to not investigate it further.
Yeah, well, at the same time, literally half a lap later, Ferrari got to do Ferrari things, and Charles Leclerc spun into the barrier.
Yeah.
My God. On top of that, they put Leclerc on inters when everyone was on slicks in qualifying.
Yeah, that was weird. I didn't
It's
get
just it's just Ferrari. It's just Ferrari. Are you even
Yeah, they
surprised
need
at
to
this point?
they need to like hire a whole new strategy team for next year. They would have
So true.
they would have won substantially more races otherwise. Or at
They
least they'd be
probably
happy.
They probably would have won the championship, to be fair, but
Literally.
or at least there would still be a championship decider next week in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah, yeah. But we're gonna have a
Um,
championship decider between Leclerc and Perez, which is gonna be interesting,
yeah,
which
so let's
I
talk about that
really
quick.
want to talk about because
Yeah, that's
that
actually the next thing I have on my notes, Jordan. So,
so let's put it into perspective for the listeners.
yeah.
Red Bull allowed Max to overtake Checo so that he can eclipse either the Alpine of Fernando Alonso or the Ferrari of Charles Leclerc, so that they get less points in the championship, just based purely on his pace. Said he has faster pace, higher chance of allowing them to get more points by overtaking them. They had also clearly stated that if he fails to do so in the last lap, he will let Checo overtake him. That way, Checo is ahead by 2 points going into Abu Dhabi. At least it's more of it's a damage limitations sort of strategic move and
Mm,
strategic looking.
yeah.
Now, the issue was that Max did not reach Alonso, and evidently, nor did he reach Leclerc. And when it got to the last lap, Checo obviously expected to overtake Max and cross the finish line ahead. That way, he'd get the 2 points boost on Leclerc. Now, that didn't happen. And when the race engineer, I forget who Max's race engineer is,
DP.
asked Max, why didn't he do that? Max responded with, I want to find the quote.
Uh, I'm vaguely paraphrasing, but it was basically, I don't come to them, they come to me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Something like that. It said, like, you have to stop asking me these sorts of questions. I've already put my foot down. It's not happening.
yeah.
And it's the type of quote where it shows that, we know who runs the show around here.
Yeah, but let's be real here. This is not new in Max Verstappen's career. Even since we've started this podcast, we have talked about so many things that Max has said on the radio and during interviews and on podiums and everything where he's just a baby because he doesn't get
Yeah.
his way.
Yeah. And he was very stubborn about it. And then Checo comes on the radio. And what does Checo say? I'm going to find the quote because I want to read the full quote. Uh, I
I,
don't want to butcher it.
where you were the one that sent it to me, eh?
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm going.
I am very surprised after all I did for him. If he has 2 world championships, it's thanks to me.
Yes.
And then I got sent something else by my friend from ESPN F1 that said, oh no, I think it was you also. It might have been. I don't even know. But
It
it
really
basically
shows
said it shows who he really is. Yeah.
exactly.
Did you send that to me also?
I did. I sent you both of
Okay.
them. Now that we read these quotes out in this exchange, what do you think happens next at Red Bull? Do we think that everything stays the same?
Everything's gonna stay the same.
Do we think
That's
anything's
it.
going to change?
Everything's staying the same. Here's the thing, okay? I We knew that Max has a bad temper and that he's a baby when it comes to not things not getting his way. And we kind of just, put it under the table, throw it under the rug because he's a really good driver. But sometimes things like this comes out and it's just like, yeah, no, maybe someone should talk to him and say, hey, by the way, you probably should clean up your act. For me, I think the worst moment of that was last year in Saudi Arabia, where he fully just left the podium.
Yes, I was actually thinking the exact same thing.
Like, come on, you're on the podium. Do you know how many drivers would kill to be on that podium?
Yeah,
Sure, you don't need to spray Lewis and Valtteri and James with champagne, but you could just like, I don't know, drink a little bit, cheers the everyone else, take the picture and go home. Like you just be respectful. That's all that I'm asking. It's not that hard. You're literally a two-time world champion. You already have won the championship this year. The constructors championship is already under wraps. Maybe it's time that you help your teammate.
100%. Now, I'm going to say something, and I hope the listeners don't crucify us for it. But what I will say is that I think Max Verstappen is the modern day Fernando Alonso.
Oh boy.
He is the
Hot
20,
takes here at the
he's
JJF1 podcast.
26, 27 years old. He is just Fernando Alonso, but
Isn't he
13 years,
25?
25, I have no idea. He's whoever Fernando Alonso is, but 15 to 17 years younger.
Such a baby. Seriously, it's so frustrating.
It is very frustrating.
And the
And
thing is that we've talked about how good he is in the car.
he may be the most dominant driver in F1,
Exactly.
but we have to consider that F1 is a sport that talks about inclusivity. F1 is a sport that talks about achieving all these ecological goals. F1 is a sport that talks about doing good for the world. And, you know, having somebody be the model of F1, that being Max Verstappen, is the model of F1 today. He is everybody who's young coming into Formula One. Right now, they're not really focusing on Lewis. To them,
Mm,
he's old. It's now Max Verstappen's show.
yeah.
He needs to be more of a role model, especially for younger people. And
Not who he is.
it is not who he is, and unfortunately, I think that it should be addressed. I don't think it will be addressed.
No, it's not going to be addressed. He has the championships. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I think the way it needs to go down is that as of next year, as of Bahrain 2023, Checo's got to get all the same upgrades that Max got, and they got to let them race. And if they don't do that as of next year, Max already got the world titles.
Yeah.
They got to give them each a fair shot, and
Yeah.
that's
This
what
sounds a
Fernando showed
lot.
here for us. There was. Oh yeah, go.
So this sounds a lot like 14, 15, 16 Mercedes in the making, and I don't want it to happen because I love Checo.
Yeah, I don't want it to happen either, but there was an interview this year with Sky Sports right before the Mexican Grand Prix, or I should say the Mexico City GP. And Checo was talking, and they asked him a question, and they said, Sergio, do you believe you had a fair shot against Max this season? And without hesitation, Checo answered, I do not believe it. Because he got the upgrades. He's clearly being favored in the garage when he started winning some races. And that is how the season went down. I think that they need to start giving Checo some upgrades and give them an even shot against each other and let them
Yeah,
race.
let him race. Uh,
And
yeah,
and that's how it should go down because Max is the number one driver. We get it, but he's already got the championships. Let them race, have a competitive season, and let them race. That's my take.
yeah. I think we should let them race next year, but let's see what happens with that. Um, Anything else we want to say about Max and Checo a little bit more, or do we continue with the rest of the race?
Yeah, no, I'm just really upset, but yeah,
I'm also upset, but
I'm very
that's
much looking forward to seeing the reactions from a lot of the F1 journalists.
I'm
Uh,
curious to see what Christian Horner is gonna say.
yeah, I'm curious too.
Because we saw how often Otmar Safnauer ripped into his drivers after the sprint. Um, if Christian Horner has some sort of foothold on this team, then he needs to put his foot down too.
Because
That's what it is.
I think so as well because I think that Max is starting to kind of believe it's his team. At least that's what that comment showed.
Yeah,
Max thinks that he has the championships and he can operate as he pleases at this point.
yeah. And that's Max. Anyways, so Lando Norris's car just died because that's
Yes.
what it is.
On his birthday
Um,
too.
Yeah, on his birthday. 23
I
or
think it's 24. I think it's 24.
24. Anyways, so Lando pulls over and there's a safety car restart for 10 laps. And everyone makes it out alive. What was going through your mind when you saw that the safety car was ending?
That George Russell was going to win his first race.
Oh yeah, you thought I thought that Hamilton was gonna win. I was like,
Nope.
there's gotta be something that's gonna happen.
Nope. In history, Hamilton has never been the best at safety car restarts. Um, so my take is that I was very happy, and I was thinking that George Russell was about to win his first F1 race. Secretly, I was kind of hoping that Ferrari kind of makes a surprise. Um,
We'll
you
talk
know,
about Ferrari. Wait for it.
but um, no, I just wanted a first time Grand Prix winner, and I wanted to be
Yeah.
George Russell.
So before we talk about the absolute accomplishments by Mercedes today, let's talk about Ferrari. Um, and Leclerc had the same conversation with his engineer that Checo had basically after, where Leclerc wanted Sainz to step down so that he could take the podium and take second place in the championship. But neither of them listened, and I think that Carlos Sainz just drove the better race today. Um,
I think that Martin Brundle was saying on the broadcast something how yes, in theory they should do it, but it's for a podium. And also mentioned that a couple of years ago, Carlos Sainz was pushed up to a podium when he was at McLaren.
yeah,
Um, it was his first ever podium in F1 that he got, I think, via a penalty that I don't know if it was Hamilton or
yeah. It was a 5 second penalty that pushed him up to third place.
exactly. So he got the penalty, he got the third place. So it's different when it's for a podium. Um, but yeah, I think he drove the better race. I think that he deserved the podium, and I
Yeah,
think in the grand scheme of things, it was the better move to not switch them.
yeah. I think so too. But to be fair, I understand what Leclerc is saying because we just ripped Max for not doing it. So
Right, but I think that in this case, um,
I understand
the way
what
they went
he's
about it
saying.
is so much. It's more. It's different.
Yeah, it is
If
different. That's
Max had
true.
gone on the radio and said, "I tried to find a turn, wasn't able to do it. Sorry, guys," we would not be having this conversation.
No, we would not.
They were clear with him. Max led them to believe something. He did not complete it, and then responded with arrogance.
Yeah.
Whereas here, Charles was asking for something. Ferrari weighed the pros and the cons, made a decision, and then said, "You have to live with our decision," and they respected the team's decision.
Okay. Yeah, that's
That,
fair.
that's what I think. I think it's
Ferrari making sound strategy decisions.
we're not
What?
used to it. That's why we're having this like kind of
Yeah.
we're kind of bugging a little bit.
I know. Something isn't adding up.
Yeah.
But yeah, checkered flag comes, and George Russell and Lewis Hamilton complete the first Mercedes 1-2 since Imola 2020. And Mercedes win a race for the first time since Saudi Arabia 2021. George Russell is a first time Grand Prix winner. Mr. Consistent. Remember for how many races in a row he didn't finish outside the top five?
He
Uh, like the guy really showed that he deserves that seat, and he probably should have gotten it a few years back.
yeah, he got it ripped away from him at the Sakir Grand Prix back in 2020. Um, and that was the second to last race of 2020. So exactly 2 years to the race, he gets his first Formula One win,
Yeah,
and also did it in clean fashion, leading almost the entire
lights
time.
the flag.
Yeah,
Yeah,
lights the flag. I think it was the entire time he led,
yeah.
and
No,
then
Hamilton was leading for a bit, and then he pit.
yeah, that's what I thought exactly.
Yeah,
So
basically lights the flag.
yeah, basically. But so long story short, I think that he really deserves this. I think that this is Felipe Massa said at the sprint interview yesterday. said this is the first of many, George Russell. I think this is the first of many. I do think we're looking at a future world champion. Could it be next year? Could it be after that? I think we're getting close.
You know
Uh,
what? Yeah, you have a very good point, Jordan.
he when the car was doing terribly, he was Mr. Consistent. So now
We
that the
called
car
him we called him the shitbox whisperer.
exactly, and now that the car has a couple of miles under its belt, couple of research, a couple of races of research in these new uh in this new car setup in these 2022 cars, I think that when he has a half decent car, he can put on the podium consistently. And that's what we're going to be calling Mr. Consistent soon is Mr. Podium George Russell.
That's true. I after we ripped Mercedes for how many years? If I can't believe I'm saying this, but I'm happy that a Mercedes car
Yeah,
won
me
today.
too. I was like, I'm so happy Mercedes won. And I was so upset when they would win last year.
Yeah, exactly.
But
But
as
I think that it could very much be that based on the slow upward momentum that Mercedes is currently witnessing, that they could easily fight for the championship next year. This could just
yeah,
be this could just be one off year instead of, oh, it's a new era, so they're not going to be competitive anymore.
well, if you look at Red Bull in 2020, they had won 2 races in 2020, if I remember correctly.
Yep,
Um, and Max won Abu Dhabi 2020. Also, people seem to forget that.
he
And
did.
and that pushed them to be so good in 2021. They had an upward trajectory, they did a lot of research throughout the year and made their car even better for 2021 and won the championship for 2021. So I think that we're going to see kind of a similar trajectory with Mercedes now is that near the end of the season, they got all the research together, they got all the wind tunnel time, they got all the testing done, they got some real races in this car. They're figuring out the problems, they're fixing it up. And I think the next year we start seeing an upward trajectory. I think it's going to be a three-way fight for the championship next year. I really do.
Uh, See, the thing, I think though that the situation from 2020 to 2021 versus 2022 to 2023 is different because of the pandemic basically not changing the regulations between 2020 and 2021. So they were basically developing the same car, whereas between now and next year, who knows what technical regulations could come in. But there's definitely going to be more drastic changes on next year's car compared to this year's versus 2020s and 2021s. But that still doesn't mean that they won't be fighting for the championship.
I think that I think they have a good base is what I'm trying to
Yeah,
say.
yeah, they definitely do.
And as the broadcast team said, Stevenage nil, Kingsland 1.
One, yeah. Also, Lewis Hamilton is becoming a likable character, and
Yeah, I know.
yeah, who saw that coming? Because we certainly
I
did
like
not.
Lewis. I
Yeah,
really do. I like
and
Bottas a little bit more,
like
but I like
we
Lewis.
saw him as like the big villain last year, for like the underdog Max, and now Max is just like being a major baby again.
He was a baby
um,
last year. I wanted Lewis to
oh,
win.
I said again. I didn't mean
Yeah,
for the first time. This is like not new. So
I
yeah,
just looking forward to seeing what Christian Horner has to say. But on that note, Jonah,
yeah.
we have our final race in Abu Dhabi. You were at the track actually a couple of weeks ago.
I was 2 weeks ago. I was in Abu Dhabi at the track.
And now that you did your pre-race scouting, what do you see for Abu Dhabi? What are your predictions?
My my prediction is that hmm, the people who will not be in F1 next year will retire from the race.
So that's Daniel Ricciardo, that's
Sebastian Vettel
Sebastian
and
Vettel,
Nicholas Latifi
and Nicholas Latifi. Okay, that's actually not a bad prediction.
and possibly Mick Schumacher.
My prediction is that I think that Ferrari and Mercedes will make up the podium once again.
Mm.
And I think it's going to be a 1-2-1. It's not going to be a 1-2. It's going to be a Ferrari in the middle and two Mercedes sandwiching them. And I think
Is it
that
gonna be Russell or
I
Hamilton?
think that Lewis Hamilton will not have a season where he wins 0 races. I think that he'll win next race.
Honestly, I would vibe with that. If he wins, I would vibe with that. Because
Yeah,
like the championship's done already. At
yeah.
this point, I'm here for the jokes. I'm here for the drama. I'm here for the racing.
I'm just here to see the cars go through that twisty, turny pit exit. That's all I'm here for.
That's all that we're here for.
Yeah.
Look, I will
It goes
say,
under the track.
yeah, the circuit is beautiful. It is a beautiful looking circuit and it's very well done. And they've made it better this last
Last
year
year.
for racing. So you know what? I'm intrigued to see how this race goes. Um especially with the new cars that are supposed to be more competitive, more passing and everything. Through Yas Marina.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've finished the penultimate episode of season 2 of the JJF1 podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you everyone for listening. If you want to listen to us for the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, the off season and beyond, feel free to like our Facebook page, follow us on Instagram at the JJF1 podcast, listen to us on YouTube, everywhere, wherever you find your podcast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon. I'm adding more to this exit. Anyways, we will see you for the next episode.
See
See ya.
ya.